President Ettinger, we're ready whenever you are.
Thank you very much, Amber. Good afternoon. I will now call the University Senate to order. Whoops, I'm blocking the camera. That's not good. Before I begin my report, I'd like to note that I'm going to need to leave the meeting after my report and questions to attend a Board of Regents special meeting that unfortunately is overlapping. I regret that these meetings overlap, but our Senate Vice Chair, Rashna Shah, will preside over both the meetings in my absence. So if that's okay, I will turn to my report now. It's my pleasure to be with you all again here today. I appreciate the opportunity to engage with such a broad cross-section of faculty, staff, and students in this mode. I'll start with an update from our last officially noticed board meeting of the Board of Regents in October, where the board approved the university's 2024 capital request for state investment on urgent renovations and updates to our facilities across the campuses. With that approval, we'll be pursuing a $500 million request for higher education asset preservation and replacement, or known as HEAPR funds, during the 2024 legislative session. This proposal was built around institutional priorities, as well as the feedback we received during the summer from many of you, and also the strategic guidance outlined in the university system-wide strategic plan Impact 2025. These priorities include enhancing student-facing facilities and services, including libraries, student unions, academic support, student counseling facilities, recreation, and wellness. Investing in high-demand academic programs and mission support facilities. Right-sizing the overall amount of campus space. Advancing innovation in health sciences, agriculture, and biotechnology, and ensuring inclusive, accessible, and welcoming campuses. Facilities in poor or critical conditions have unfortunately become increasingly prevalent. It encompasses more than 1/4 of the roughly 33 million square feet of facilities that the University of Minnesota manages across 5 campuses and in additional locations around the state. In addition to approving the recommended 2024 state capital request, the board also approved the recommended 6-year capital investment plan. Regents also approved a fiscal year 2025 supplemental budget request of $45 million in recurring operational funds to help address a portion of the expected cost increases and to keep costs lower for students by minimizing tuition increases. You may recall that we received a similar amount for the first year of the biennium during the last legislative session, but for the second portion of it, as of right now, the amount was 0. This request is seeking the same amount in the second year, and we feel it's critically necessary to maintain the depth and breadth of university programming on behalf of all Minnesotans. There was an initial hearing on this request held on Monday at the Capitol. It was chaired by Representative Gene Pawlowski. Vice President Julie Tonneson and I were the principal presenters for the university, with help from UMPD Chief Matt Clark, faculty liaison Donna Spanos-Martin, and Twin Cities undergrad student government president Shashank Morali. We also benefited from the presence of 5 members of our Board of Regents. The 2-hour session included questions from legislators on a wide array of topics. So although the official Minnesota legislative session is still a few months away, legislative work is indeed already ramping up under the leadership of Melissa Lopez Frenzen, our new Executive Director of Government and Community Relations. Melissa has a broad, bipartisan, and intentional plan that will fully engage the university with our constituents in the community, in Minnesota, and nationally as well. Tours for legislators and other state officials of the university's 2024 capital requested projects have been going on Twin Cities and Morris campuses. We'll be seeing these visitors later this month, and other campuses have already had them. The 2024 Minnesota legislative session officially begins on February 12th. I'm pleased to report about our back-to-school safety efforts. From the new turnstiles at Pioneer Hall on the Twin Cities campus to increasing access control in our campus buildings throughout the system, we have given students an array of safety resources and tools, and I've heard a great deal of positive feedback. UMPD officers are also completing their work with transit police at the Twin Cities campus light rail stations and trains. Providing extra visibility on mass transit came at the request of the campus community, and this partnership has been helpful in promoting a safe fall semester. 2 weeks ago, I participated in one of the regular campus safety walks, as well as meeting with community members committed to campus safety. I remain thankful for Chief Clark's leadership and for the tireless efforts of our UMPD in keeping our students, faculty, staff, visitors, and guests safe. In addition to campus safety, we understand that recent events internationally and here in the US may cause members of our community to sometimes feel unsafe, anxious, or isolated. We are focusing on providing a safe and supportive campus environment for everyone. I encourage any member of our community to seek out assistance they need during this time. Student mental health services remain available for individuals in need of trauma-informed care, and we remain committed to upholding the principles of support and empathy as we navigate through challenging times. Faculty and staff also have resources available through the Employee Assistance Program. And all members of our community, should they encounter any instances of bias or discrimination, should bring them to our attention through the Bias Response and Referral Network. And if necessary, do not hesitate to contact our University of Minnesota Police. A few additional updates. On the healthcare side, the Governor's Task Force met twice in early October, with further meetings scheduled over the coming months. As a reminder, a written summary of the recommendations are due to the Governor in January of 2024. Conversations have also been occurring simultaneously since early September, with Fairview, as we both assess the future of our partnership. We will continue to keep you updated as further progress is made in these discussions with Fairview and through the task force. Our search for the next chancellor of the Duluth campus is moving forward. You're obviously very familiar with the presidential search here for the total system, and kind of a somewhat simultaneous timeframe we're working on that search up in Duluth as well. In September, I announced that we had launched the search with many thanks to Lori Carroll, the chancellor of the University of Minnesota Rochester, and Lisa Irwin, who was UMD's vice chancellor for student life and dean of students. They are serving as the co-chairs for the search committee. The full search committee held their first meeting earlier this week and will hold listening sessions with the UMD community on Monday, November 6th. And I'm looking forward to participating in person in those listening sessions as well. The feedback we receive will advise the committee's development of the position profile, and we expect that candidate recruitment will get underway this winter, leading to finalist interviews and the appointment of the next UMD chancellor during the spring 2024 semester. Nominations for the Faculty Professional Conduct Review and Implementation Group, which will review the earlier recommendations and look at possible implementations, are due by Monday, November 6th. That group is being co-chaired by Ned Patterson from the Twin Cities campus and Lynn Shu from the Duluth campus, and will look for involvement across the system and include faculty, staff, and students. The group plans to start their work later this semester and continue through the spring semester. If you'd like to nominate someone, we can share the link to the form. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to either of the co-chairs for additional information. The group working toward a response to the Senate-endorsed resolution on workforce reinvestment, Rebuilding a Better You for Employees, continues to meet regularly, working towards the delivery of an official response to the Senate during the spring 2024 semester. I'm thankful to Mary Roman Kuhl, Senior Director of OHR's Total Rewards Area, and Beth Lewis, Vice Provost for Faculty and Academic Affairs, for their thoughtful leadership of this effort. I'm going to conclude my report with a brief recap of some of the visits I've had the privilege of making and events I've attended over the past month. The Stein Lecture, presented by our law school, is always a notable event on the Twin Cities campus. This prestigious series has brought numerous Supreme Court justices to campus, ranging from Ruth Bader Ginsburg to Antonin Scalia. This year's conversation featured Justice Amy Coney Barrett and drew a packed house to Northrop. Her appearance did draw some protests, both outside the hall and briefly inside as well, but I was personally proud of our community's ability to respect this right to protest without depriving our law students and other guests of their opportunity to listen to the conversation between former Dean Stein and Justice Barrett. At the Regents Emeriti dinner last month, we recognized the tenures of outgoing Regents David McMillan, Ken Powell, Darren Rocha, and Steve Sviggum, who collectively served the University of Minnesota for over 40 years. Being a University of Minnesota Regent is a critically important role for the University of Minnesota system and to the citizens of Minnesota. Last week, I traveled to Washington, D.C. for the AAU fall meeting. It was my first AAU meeting, and I was grateful to have the opportunity to interact with other college presidents and discuss our shared experiences. I also had the chance to connect with former President Joan Gable, former President Eric Kaler, and former Executive Vice Provost Robert Jones. Lots of us with U of M ties. To have a group of peers like this is truly a special experience. Later in the week, I was at our Morris campus to participate in the inauguration of Janet Shrunk Erickson as the 7th chancellor of the Morris campus. Chancellor Shrunk Erickson has a deep connection to the Morris campus and the community. She's a valued thought partner to me, to her fellow chancellors, fellow faculty members, Morris campus leaders, governance groups, and students, just to name a few. The Morris campus is headed toward a bright future under the leadership of Chancellor Erickson. Autumn Saturdays are often centered around college football, and that's been a really fun part of this position. It was exciting to be involved with homecoming activities on the Twin Cities campus during the last week of September. I participated in the Student Blood Drive, spoke at the UMAA's Alumni Awards Affair, was part of the royalty coronation at Skyumania, and witnessed the Gopher football victory against Louisiana. Homecoming, both here at the Twin Cities and at our greater Minnesota campuses, is a great reminder of what the University of Minnesota means to our many proud alumni. Just this past Friday, I had the opportunity to engage with students and their family at the Gopher Get-Together during Parent and Family Weekend on the Twin Cities campus. Attendees enjoyed dessert and live jazz music as they explored the Wiseman Art Gallery. It was fun to hear about their experiences and share their pride in being part of the U of M community. I also spent a day last month in Rochester, meeting with Chancellor Carroll and her leadership team, touring our unique and evolving UMR campus, and interacting with faculty, students, and community leaders. I even attended a highly interactive chemistry class, which fortunately was not graded, at least for me. We had the opportunity to have lunch in the new dining center, aptly named The Perch, on its first day of operations. It is located in the Student Life Center, which has successfully been converted from into a residential hall from a former hotel. The students were thrilled to have this new resource, and I remain excited about the future of UMR and our presence in Rochester in cooperation with civic partners. I also had my first meeting with Minnesota tribal leaders earlier this week. We had a good conversation about resources in the new module of the Gopher Equity Project, as well as on the new website for Native American Affairs, and how we are reviewing the Truth Report. I'm looking forward to continuing these conversations at our next meeting. This concludes my report, so we can turn to any questions for the president. There were no questions submitted in advance, but I'm happy to take questions from the senators at this time. I'm not seeing any questions, but I'm not totally sure. Oh, no, I do see Sam. You have a question? I don't know. Maybe
okay.
Go ahead.
There we go. So just one quick question. Given your update around the state legislature, I'm just curious. What's the importance of faculty, staff, students getting involved in advocacy and advocating for the university at the legislature?
Very important, and you forgot a group, the alumni as well. We definitely, especially honestly on the bonding side, because we do have a more specific list already ready for what projects we are hoping to get done this year, that the more we can disseminate that information and have folks advocate with their, the legislators from their own areas, as well as potentially coming up to the Hill to do that, that'll be terrific. So I know Melissa will be a lot more, have a chance with her team to do it on a more organized basis as we start heading into those hearings, but that's going to be a very important element as we head into January, February, and beyond. I think I see a hand from David Jacobs.
Thank you. What I was wondering is about the Governor's Health Commission. You said that they were talking, but I wondered if you could give us a hint about what they're talking about and any ideas you have about where that might go.
Well, it's a quick process. I mean, they owe the report in January. My understanding is month one, so October was basically more information gathering. They had a variety of speakers. They looked at how some other academic healthcare systems in the country are organized and structured. As we pivot now into November, it's going to be much more incumbent upon that group to start teeing up some more specific suggestions. I think they're in the realm of the state potentially providing some of the academic medical funding support that is necessary for us to continue our mission. In the long run, we also need to look at potential capital support for example, a new medical center on campus, but we owe them obviously a more specific plan before we would get to that. But it's as this month proceeds, we should have a better sense of what the committee is kicking around, and by December they would be formulating their recommendations.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
Thanks. Matthew Wynn.
Hi, yeah, thanks. You mentioned a large request, 500 million or so, to address student-facing infrastructure, and also mentioned a problem of inaccessibility of buildings. This is something that's on our mind in my department. I just wanted to see if you can clarify whether those are separate pursuits, and whether we're prioritizing sort of ADA-related accessibility, or if that's just one pursuit.
I mean, my understanding is that's an aspect of the request. It sometimes is one of a series of elements when you look at an older building that did not have those. So, for example, I know on the Morris campus, the multicultural center there, you can't get past. I mean, there's no elevator. It's just not accessible well at all. That is one of the items on the HEPA request list. But we could potentially maybe get back to you with a little more on the specifics as to, okay, for other projects, which ones are really oriented toward accessibility versus that just being part of a project. Any other questions? Not seeing any. Don't want to cut anything off. But seeing none, I will hand the proverbial gavel over to Professor Rachna Shah, our Vice Chair of the University and Faculty Senate, who will now preside over the remainder of the University Senate meeting and the full Faculty Senate meeting. But thank you very much for allowing me to participate in this fashion. I'm sorry I'm not staying for the whole thing, but look forward to see you again next time.
Thank you, President Ettinger. We'll move on to the agenda. Item 4 is a discussion about classroom needs at the university. I will turn it over to Professor Jim Kotner, Chair of the Classroom Advisory Subcommittee, to present the topic.
Thank you. So, yes, I'm Jim Kotner. I'm a professor in ecology, evolution, and behavior. And when Mark B. and Amber asked me to do this, I recognized at the time that I was going to be traveling from Minnesota to Europe on the day that I would be doing this. And I don't think I fully appreciated just how tired I might be. So bear with me as I try to work through this. Basically, so I chair the Classroom Advisory Subcommittee, and we are advisory to SCEP, which is the Senate Committee on Education Policy. And I have some slides on our background and mission, but they don't seem to be showing up. So I'm just going to go through them with you right now. So our charge is to provide faculty, staff, and student consultation and input on a wide range of issues forwarded to our subcommittee from across the university relating to how our classrooms, computer laboratory, and study spaces can most effectively support the teaching and learning and outreach and public service missions of the university. Our committee is composed of faculty, students, P&A staff. We have several ex officio members, the director of the Office of Classroom Management, OCM, Facilities Management, OIT, the Center for Teaching and Learning, and also the Office of Disability Services. What I'm going to talk to you today is motivated as part of our mission to basically understand what's going on with classrooms at the university. We had Monique McKenzie from the planning committee come to us in 2021 and talk to us about the campus plan. I forget, it's a 10-year plan. And there was a lot of discussion about some really awesome things that are happening on all of our campuses. But the thing that struck us was that there was very little emphasis on the importance of classrooms. So as I mentioned, we have faculty and students are a big part of our committee. There are some needs on all of our campuses in terms of classrooms that we felt that weren't being met. And so based on that discussion, we decided that it might be good for us to come up with essentially a strategic plan that's focused on classrooms at the university, so that when the planning committee moves forward in the future, they will have some documentation that will help guide them in terms of what the needs are in terms of classrooms going forward. So our goal then, we decided, was to survey faculty, staff, and students to see what we're doing well, what we need to work on, and what we can do better in the future in terms of our classroom needs. And eventually what we want to do once we have an idea of what the needs are, we want to develop a strategic plan for classroom spaces. And as I said, this will help in planning going forward on our campuses, I should say. So we've already learned a bunch of things. One of the things that came up early and often is that we need more large classrooms, especially on the East Bank. Another thing that has come up on essentially all the campuses is that faculty and students seem to think that we need more active learning classrooms, basically on all our campuses. There's another issue that has come up is that we need to make the classrooms more welcoming to diverse groups, and there's a lot of things that we can do along those lines to make that better. And to be honest, one of the things that it's still not clear to the committee and myself is whether or not what our needs are basically for hybrid classrooms going forward. As we all know, during the pandemic, the need for hybrid classrooms was quite high. But whether or not that sort of a classroom scenario is going to be a huge part of what we do, or even a consistent part of what we do going forward, is not all that clear to us. So basically, the reason I'm coming to the Senate today is to let you know that what we're working on right now is a survey. And so we plan to survey faculty, students, and staff on what all of us see as our needs going forward. And it's not going to be an onerous survey, you know. I'm not a big fan of surveys that go on forever and ever. So I'm trying to keep it to 10 questions or less. And we have some questions about basically what you use classrooms for. Are you a student? Are you on staff? Are you faculty? What kind of classes do you take? What kind of classes do you teach? And essentially, we want to know what are the most important factors that go into choosing a classroom, for instance, for faculty. Some of the impediments to using classrooms and impediments to learning that we presently are encountering on our campuses. And then obviously the main thing we want to do is try to figure out what we can do better going forward. And so that's really all I have to say, other than to just let everybody know that we're hoping that this survey will come out hopefully before Thanksgiving, but certainly by the end of the semester. And again, it's just going to be a short survey, but if you have information and feelings and data on your experience in classrooms, we want to know about it so that we can put together a strategic plan that is specifically focused on our classrooms and will, you know, make us a better teaching institution going forward. And with that, I'll just open it up to questions or comments, and let's see what you guys have to say. Okay, Sarah?
Okay, thank you for, first of all, for taking this initiative in hand and working through it, and we'll be looking forward to the survey. But I evidently jumped the gun because when I saw this on the agenda, I sent out a query to the Morris. Oh, I should introduce myself, sorry. I am Sarah Buchanan, French faculty on the Morris campus. So I did send out I created a Google Doc and asked people to put some comments in there. Jim, are you interested in that now? I did share it with Rashna, but I can also email it to you or to anybody who would be interested in hearing what some of that feedback was.
Sure, that'd be awesome. I
Okay.
mean, yeah, that would be great. Please send it to me.
Okay.
Shauna.
Hello, I'm Shanna Waters. I'm a teaching professor over at the Department of Computer Science and Engineering. Can I ask if the survey will be also asking about the support of classroom services? For example, many people who have never taught in the evening, if you have taught in the evening and you've had an issue, basically there's no support. I had a pretty major issue in my own classroom a few weeks ago, and I about canceled class because it was so bad and there was absolutely no support. So could you please either have an open question, open for us so we can put information if you don't ask for it specifically? Would you be able to do that, or ask about how do we believe support is from classroom services and the staffing? Sure. Thank you.
Sure, I can put that on there. Looks like David, you're up next.
Thank you. What I wanted to say a real positive thing, which is that I'm a professor in the School of Public Health, and the classrooms that I've been teaching in the last couple of years have fantastic sound systems and display systems. So that's really an improvement over years ago, when basically you just were in a big enclosed space with you had to really shout and so on. And I wondered, what is it that your group currently sees as needs for beyond that? I think that the hybrid teaching is so important. For example, I have a class of 40 students, and maybe 5 of them are out, especially with some respiratory virus or something at any one time. And I like that they can join us. So I wonder what else are you seeing that's really imperative?
Well, first of all, I'd like to emphasize one thing that you said on the positive side, is that I do agree with you that OCM, OIT, and our facilities folks do an amazing job. The things that they did when COVID came, and the way they responded very quickly in that scenario, it kind of blew me away. So I agree with you there, but we can always do things better. Certainly, as you mentioned, the hybrid is a big issue, but one of the big things is OCM does a survey of individual faculty members at the end of each semester, but it's sort of a granular survey. What we're trying to go for here is a much broader perspective on what the needs are. Is it impossible for you to teach the class the way that you would like to teach it because either the classroom doesn't exist or you can't get the classroom at the times that you need it. So, it's pretty open. So we just want to hear what you guys have to say and see if we can make a coherent strategic plan moving forward. Jerry, I think you had your hand up next.
Thank you. So first of all, I think it's great that you're doing this, but the second is sometimes surveys are restricted by our perspectives on what we currently have versus where we might go in the future. And one of my interests, and one which maybe some people from the other campuses might discuss as well, is I think that education in the future is going to be where we have shared classrooms across distance. And so one of the things that we could have, since we have multiple campuses, is we could have classrooms that involved Morris and Crookston and Duluth and the Twin Cities and Rochester, and add any others I've forgotten. And we could have classrooms that involve classes which had multi-campus orientation. We could also involve people at surrounding states, other countries around the world. There might be time zone problems, but if we had the right facilities where our classrooms went from being places to project PowerPoint slides to places where we had interactive video and a variety of other features, and classroom services do what they do so well, which is to make all classrooms suitable to do everything, where we have only one podium and it does everything in every classroom, even when they move us around, which I think is a really positive thing. But if we think about what kind of classrooms might look like, if we really creative using all these new tools that are available in a modern era, least of which would be the comment from computer science and engineering, which is to have things available in the evening, because I also teach in the evening, and I'm sympathetic to that individual's comment since my son got his PhD in her department. But it's I think it's a real need to have future vision. So when you design the survey, if I can just add my own 2 cents, is don't have it, I can tell you all kinds of things I'd like better in my classroom, even though I had the privilege of designing.
30 seconds remaining.
Yeah, thank you. I can count that. Anyway, I just think that you could have where we might be in a few years down the road. Thanks.
Oh, thanks, Jerry. Yeah, I agree. one of the things that happened during COVID is I taught my class to multiple U of M campuses, and that's gone away now, but I don't see any reason why we can't continue to do some of that. Adolfo.
Thank you, Adolfo Carrillo Cabello, PNA Senator, Twin Cities Campus. I first want to thank you, reiterate the appreciation that other people have expressed in regards to taking this on. And I wanted to also echo the previous comment in regards to a forward-looking type of survey. It kind of struck me to think of asking people about their current needs, and I wanted to express a desire for also thinking forward in terms of innovation. What is it that we're not currently able to support? In particular, knowing that there's a proposal for a digital first textbook program, I'm curious whether the synchronization of digital materials in the classrooms are currently enabled. How are they intersecting with the current technologies that are planned? So just all in all, how are we thinking not on our current needs, but 5-10 years from now might be useful, I think, for exploring other forms of course formats that might be possible as expressed earlier. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thanks a lot. And John Patton. John?
Yeah. Sorry, I was trying to get unmuted. So I just want to ask if the survey is going to make a distinction between like OCM and HD Classroom Services as representative in the medical school. A lot of our coursework goes through and gets scheduled through HD Classroom Services as opposed to OCM. So there are definitely distinctions between what we're looking for in different areas, and so I just wanted to make sure that was going to get captured. So
I wasn't aware of that, but we can certainly make sure that we try to characterize that.
Okay, because they basically everything in Moose Tower, PWB, HSEC, all of that is all run through a separate group. So
okay. Thanks. Okay, Sarah.
Okay, it did take me a while to get unmuted. Trying to work on the video. There we go. I just wanted to reiterate what some of the other folks, what became really clear on our Morris campus survey was that what is vitally important is for those who are doing classroom revisions or renovations to consult with the faculty or the instructors who teach in that space. There were some upgrades made to our class spaces here that actually resulted in very frustrated faculty for a number of different reasons, having to do with placement of screens that covered whiteboards and other pieces in terms of being able to move tables and such like that. So whatever goes forward, I think it is vitally important that when a renovation is planned, that the instructors who teach in those spaces be consulted and asked what they envision for that space. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I mean, the renovation issue is a sticky one for sure. I know there's several buildings that have classrooms that are being renovated right now, and just finding flexible and appropriate space to replace those is really difficult. And I think it speaks to a bigger issue on our campus, which is, we're really tight. I mean, OCM runs a pretty tight machine, and it works pretty well, but there are, like, if you want schedule something from 10 until 2, it's really difficult. And a lot, we don't want to have excess classrooms that are being wasted, but we also want to have some flexibility. Okay.
Any other questions?
Okay, David, I had to.
Hi.
Dave.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. This is a small issue, but it actually affects the way I teach a lot. I think it's common for people in the physical sciences to write a lot on the boards, or to have students write on the boards. And I personally have find those whiteboards and the pens that die constantly really frustrating. If you're writing a lot, you might, if you're going to ask people about basic facilities, you might ask how many people like me would have a strong preference for chalk over those pens.
Interesting. I don't know if I can go back to chalk, but I am a big fan of the whiteboards, but I'm also not a big fan of when the markers run out. So I feel your pain.
I'm just suggesting, actually ask. You might see more people who actually prefer the chalk than you think.
Okay. Okay. Anything else?
Thank you, Professor Kotner. We will move on with the agenda. Item 6 concerns administrative responses to University Senate actions and is presented for information. Item 6 is a list of recent faculty, staff, and student deaths that have been sent for announcement to the Senate. I invite you to observe a moment of silence while I read the names. Rosa Kill, Sumit Maddy, Patrick S. Oaks. Thank you. Item 7 is approval of minutes from the University Senate meeting on September 28, 2023. Amber, please initiate the poll.
A few more seconds if you wish to vote. There being 129 ayes and 0 nays, that motion carries.
Thank you, Amber. Item 8 is Provost's report. Provost Croson, please go ahead.
Thank you, Rachna, and good morning, afternoon. We're in the afternoon, everyone. It's been a busy day, but I hope you're doing well and you had a wonderful Halloween. I wanted to just give you an update on a few things that are happening here on campus, and of course, happy to take questions afterwards. As you may hopefully all know, we are in the starting point of a presidential search process. I want to thank all of you who attended listening sessions. Those are incredibly important to help the search committee identify the position description and, of course, create the rubric that they're going to use to evaluate the candidates. For those of you or your colleagues who didn't get a chance to participate, I want to encourage you to go to the public comment portal on the Regents, University of Minnesota Regents website. There's an opportunity to submit a public comment on pretty much any topic, but I think particular comments around the presidential search, both the criteria that they should be considering, the process that you recommend, or any other feedback, I think would be especially welcome at this stage where there's still a chance to change direction. Speaking of searches, President Ettinger mentioned the Duluth Chancellor search. We also have 2 dean searches that are going, the search for the permanent dean of the law school and the search for the permanent dean of the College of Liberal Arts. I'm very grateful for those 2 interim deans for their willingness to serve. And we also are launching a search for the vice provost for the Office of Undergraduate Education. This is an incredibly important position here at the university. Bob McMaster has done an outstanding job for the last 15 years and just has an incredible amount of capacity and knowledge and expertise. He's going to be very hard to replace, but that position should be posted pretty soon. We're especially looking for someone who's here at the university, full professor, member of the faculty, and ideally somebody who has had some experience in undergraduate education, either as a Doug or an associate dean or something like that. So if you're interested, or if you know of anyone who's interested, I want to encourage them, you to nominate them and to apply for that position. We continue to work on our response to the Supreme Court decision around racial preferences in admissions. We are committed to being compliant with the new state of the law and remain committed to our diversity, equity, inclusion goals, and continuing in our processes for compliance and commitment to those goals is really the touch points that we have. As you've probably heard in the we may have heard in the Board of Regents meeting, we feel like we have a pretty good handle on our undergraduate admissions processes on all 5 of our campuses. But as you know, graduate and professional admissions decisions are much more distributed. They're not handled centrally generally. And so Scott Lanyon from the graduate school and Carrie Ryan Gallia from Office of General Counsel have been holding sessions for individuals who are involved in the graduate and professional admissions process to make sure that our processes, again, are compliant with the new state of law, but continue to reflect our commitment to advancing diversity, equity, inclusion in that space. And then my final update is that we had a very extensive discussion at the Twin Cities Deans Council and decided that this academic year will be returning to separate commencement ceremonies for each college. That used to be how we did it. And then many of you remember, because Mariucci was shut down, we had one giant ceremony at Huntington Bank Stadium, but there was definitely an interest by the deans and from our post-commencement survey of students to return to our collegiate-specific ceremonies. And so that will be our plan for this upcoming summer. And with that, I will stop. We did not get any questions in advance, but I'm always happy to take questions from the floor.
Thank you, Provost Croson. I see no questions coming for you. Thank you for being here. Moving on with the agenda, item 10 is the SEC report. Professor B, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Vice Chair Shah. Hello, everyone. The month since we last convened as the University Senate was a busy one for members of the Senate Consultative Committee, and much of the committee's activities were in some way related to the university's ongoing search for a new president. On October 12th, the SCC was invited to attend a working luncheon with members of the Board of Regents, the President's Office, and the Senate Office. And this was the first such luncheon ever held. And speaking on behalf of the SCC, I think the committee found it to be a really useful and potentially fruitful new opportunity for direct dialogue between the Board of Regents and the students, staff, and faculty represented by the executive committee of this body. So I think this is something we generally need more of, and I generally hope this luncheon becomes a tradition moving forward. So the conversations at lunch were fairly wide-ranging, but they broadly revolved around selection of the university's new president, and sort of in that context, various challenges facing the university, enhancing systemness, ensuring competitive compensation and employee retention, as well as the role of shared governance in the university's community and government relations efforts. Now, I can't speak personally to the specifics of conversations at some of the other tables, but at the table I shared with 3 of the regents and a few other folks, We spent a lot of time talking about competitive compensation and the workforce reinvestment resolution, which is, as you know, currently in the hands of the administration. And if you haven't read that document yet, I'd encourage you to do so. It's linked in today's docket. Now, at the October board meeting, the regents approved the charge and the membership of the Presidential Search Advisory Committee. Now, this is the committee charged to create a position profile, which I believe the board is likely approving at their special meeting today. And it's also charged to narrow the list of applicants down to 2 to 4 lead candidates for the board to consider. Now, the Presidential Search Advisory Committee is chaired by Regent Mary Davenport, and Professor Chris Eugen from Sociology serves as the vice chair. And I'm happy to report that 4 members of the SCC were also appointed to this committee. And these SCC members include Pavan Gudapati, who's the chair of the Student Senate Consultative Committee, Matt Verkuylen, chair of the Civil Service Consultative Committee, Colleen Flaherty Manchester, who's the past chair of the Senate Consultative Committee, and Jen Goodnow from Morris, who's the current vice chair of the Senate Consultative Committee. And so thank you to those members of the SCC who will be serving in this capacity or already serving in this capacity. I just also quickly note that the vice chair of the Search Advisory Committee, Professor Eugen, is also a former member of the University and Faculty Senates and a past vice chair of the Faculty Consultative Committee. So overall, I think there is good representation of members of the University Senate on the Presidential Search Advisory Committee. On October 25th, members of the Presidential Search Advisory Committee, including Chair Davenport and Vice Chair Eugen, held a listening session with the SCC. At this meeting, members of the SCC did what I thought was a great job of elevating and advocating for a very broad spectrum of issues of importance to students, staff, and faculty related to selection of the next president. And as you might imagine, issues related to the workforce were also raised and discussed at that meeting. Lastly, earlier this week, I met separately with Regent Davenport and Professor Eugen in my roles as SCC and FCC chair. And I shared with him my personal views on what I think will be potentially the biggest challenge faced by the next president. And I believe that challenge will be reversing decades of decline in employee compensation. You may hear an emerging theme here. I believe sort of these declines in compensation are driving some measurable declines in key elements of our mission. And I think the problem of reversing these declines in the face of what feels like disinvestment in higher education by the state of Minnesota will be a real challenge for the next president. And so I emphasize the workforce reinvestment resolution as an example of employees sounding the alarm on these issues. And I stress to Regent Davenport, Professor Eugen, the critical importance of sort of narrowing the field of potential presidential candidates down to those both who would be willing and able to tackle sort of some of the workforce related challenges this body has elevated, and who would be interested in sticking around long enough to sort of see it through. And with that, I will conclude the SCC Chair's report to the Senate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Item 11 concerns enterprise risk management. I now call on Associate Vice President Catherine Bonnison to present this item.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Can everyone hear me okay? Right. And is it possible? I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. There we go. Perfect. Okay, thank you. So I'm Catherine Bonnison. I'm the Associate Vice President of Health, Safety, and Risk Management, and I've been asked to do a brief update on where we are with enterprise risk management, which was part of Impact 2025, one of our goals under 5.4. So I will try to briefly run through these slides and hopefully it will move on the screen. Is it moving for you guys? Okay, well, that's always a good sign. Let's see if we can get, there we go. So we'll start with just, again, briefly, we'll talk about what is ERM in the context of higher education. The initial risk profile is sort of the big news, and I'll make sure I pause to give everyone a second to be able to process that information. The next steps around risk mitigation across the university, and again, why, and just to reaffirm why this work is important for all of us on the system campuses and the Twin Cities. So briefly, enterprise risk management, the reminder here is this is not a one and done. What we're trying to implement is a cycle that is a lifelong sort of process that integrates across our university system as part of our budget and strategic planning and all the other important pieces that help us move the institution forward. So the idea, again, is we identify risks, we evaluate them, we make sure that there's a sufficient mitigation plans, we communicate, And then we continue that cycle until we see risks move off the risk register. And then we have new risks that will move on to the risk register. So again, it's an ongoing cycle. So why is this so important, especially in higher education? I mean, the bottom line is to help us manage those things that are unpredictable. And I just threw in some examples, things that come at us out of, you know, the far left or right, which we aren't expecting. And then it's to make things just more predictable, help us minimize those surprises and help us be more prepared to be flexible and to react in a quick, efficient manner. So as we always do in higher education, we want to know, how do we compare to our peers? So we are a little bit behind when it comes to enterprise risk management adoption. Let me just look at these general statistics. Close to 78% of nonprofits, including higher ed, have some sort of enterprise risk management program. 69% of Big Ten schools have a formal enterprise risk management program. We are entering year one of starting this up, so we're getting there, but we're a little behind. So this is sort of the new aha information for folks who have. I think I did this presentation last year when we were just kicking it off. But this is the initial risk profile that, with the help of Baker Tilly, we've developed for the university. This profile came about through interviews with cabinet members all across the system. We talked to stakeholders of sort of high risk areas. And this was the profile that was developed from that work. I will admit, we did not for this first draft, because a lot of the work was done in the summer, we didn't get deep faculty feedback, which is something we want to remedy for our next round of the risk profile. And I can come back to this slide if there are questions, but this just gives you a snapshot of the perception of risk as identified by the folks who were surveyed. And there were about 62 folks who responded to the survey, and there were 16 that were interviewed. Okay, so I'll move on to the next one is taking this risk profile and aligning it with our Impact 2025 goals. And the reason this is important is the whole idea of doing an ERM program is to understand what risks stand in our way that might stop us from being successful. So when we look at this sort of the spectrum of goals that we have, you know, across through Impact 2025, we try to align those risks of which ones are making those goals more precarious or more challenging to meet. So it's just another way of viewing the profile. And I'll just pause for a minute because I know this is a lot of information. The color coding just looks at the way these were ranked, with the pink or red being higher priority, the yellow the next, and then the green being on the third level. I do see a raised hand. If it's okay, well, you know what, Sarah, I can pause. Do you want to go ahead and ask your question? This is a very flexible discussion.
Yes, it's just really quick. I was wondering if this risk profile also includes the coordinate campuses.
Yes, it does. It's a great question. One thing though we are struggling with is how to make it scalable, right? Because the way these were ranked may not be reflective for Crookston, Duluth, and Morris the same way in Rochester as they are the Twin Cities. And so we tried to get proportional voices into this profile, but I am struggling a little bit with how to make sure this is scalable and meaningful for each campus and not just the Twin Cities. But thank you for the question. Okay, so went too fast. There we go. So I was fortunate enough to talk to the Senate Committee on Finance and Operations a few weeks ago, and one of the discussion items they brought up, which I thought was very interesting, was around, in these risk profiles, how do you balance people's perception of risk versus what's data driven? What do we know is going to happen? And the way that we're balancing these two is we're recognizing that both are important, right? There are certain things, we have reports, we have audit reports, we know that certain, financial reports or enrollment reports, all those data, that's real, and we should pay attention to that. But people's perception is also valuable. And so moving forward, this risk profile will continue to be a balancing act between both, because of people's perception of education, the value of education, or their perception of belonging on campus, those are equally as important as whether or not, crime data is up or down. So we just wanted to recognize that we know it's a balancing act between perception and data driven as we move forward with the risk profile. So next steps, as we're trying to roll through this, year one plan, we identified, again, there were 16 risks. To try to make this more manageable, we're biting off chunks of them. So the first grouping of risks that we're going to go through and do an analysis on and some mitigation planning around are the 3 listed on the screen: crisis management. And so that's our ability to respond if something bad happens. So that's not like a small lab incident we wouldn't call a crisis, but if there was an incident in a laboratory where someone was injured or hurt or killed, that would be a crisis. So just to give you an idea of magnitude. Campus safety, again, evaluating real and perceived risks, and then cybersecurity. And these 3 were selected because of the velocity and the likelihood, meaning when they occur, it's really problematic and disruptive. And that the likelihood based on what we've seen in the last few years is fairly high. So these are our suggestions. We're always open to, if someone says, gosh, I can't believe you wouldn't look at, X, Y, Z, first before these 3, we are open to feedback. So this is really a lot going on the screen, but this would just give you an idea of what a risk mitigation plan would look like that we would then talk about with the risk owner. So for instance, this one is cybersecurity, and this is from another university, but this is something that we would work specifically with OIT and Bernie and other folks about these specific recommendations around cybersecurity. This just to give you a taste of what the product looks like. So as I try to wrap this up to give us time for questions, just want to drive home is the importance of doing this work, which we think it will improve our ability to make better, more informed, quicker decisions as leaders, as faculty members, as staff members. By having this risk profile, we hope to be able to avoid areas potentially where we have too many unmanaged risks, or to be able to address those and to capitalize on areas where the risks are very well managed or mitigated. So some questions to throw out just for consideration that we're always looking for feedback on is what sort of tools or products would be helpful or relevant to you in your school or college as you think about enterprise risk management. We're always trying to figure out how to solicit feedback top down and bottom up, which with a really large campus, campuses with 5 campuses and 27,000 employees, that can be challenging. And we want to make sure we include the governance structure to help us develop this and help us develop a system-wide culture of risk awareness. So with that, I will stop sharing so I don't take up the screen, and I am happy to take any questions that you might have. All right, I see Sarah's hand is raised. Sarah, did you have another question?
Yes, there, I finally got it working here. And I tried to wait, but I'm wondering if perhaps your committee could also prioritize how we battle the public perception of education. As a member of a liberal arts campus and a French major, we're feeling very, very strongly the decline in perceived value of the humanities and of the liberal arts as a whole. And for us, it's, entering into crisis mode, and we could use as much support with that as possible. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Sarah. That's great feedback. Appreciate it. Let's see, Mark.
Hi, Catherine. Thanks for coming today, and thank you for the presentation.
Yeah,
2 questions, and if I can get them both out, I will. One is, can you review how many people were sort of surveyed and interviewed? I thought I heard 62 surveyed and 16 interviewed. And I'm wondering if you can comment on whether that feels like an adequately representative number of people to sort of give a full picture of what enterprise risks might be. That's question 1. Question 2, do you think there's any risk associated with a focus on, and I understand their logic, but a focus on sort of the most likely, most fast coming things, like crisis management or something like that? Is there a risk of not ever dealing with things that may be sort of happening over a much longer time scale because we're always just putting out the current fire? So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you.
Those are really great questions. Thank you, Mark. I try to write them down. So I think the first question, yeah, your numbers were correct. I think we sent interviews, questions out to 78 folks. We got about 62 as a response. And then the one-on-one interviews were conducted with cabinet members. Do I think that's the right amount? Probably not. But I think that the purpose was to get a starting point that we could then launch from. And that was my hope in trying to get through and be able to talk to governance groups and talk to the Board of Regents and talk to, you know, other committees across campus, is how do we engage folks to be more involved in the development of this risk profile going forward. So I don't think it's adequate, and we'd like to see that model mature. It was definitely a starting point. The second question is really interesting, and I think it's worth talking about. Part of the struggle with these long-term, you know, if we talk about enrollment, right, as a risk of declining enrollment being sort of this long-term problem, it is certainly something we should get in front of. I think the reason we picked the high velocity ones first is to be able to get our feet wet with something that seemed definable. And then we know what that process was and how to actually go through this mitigation, this deep mitigation plan, and get one done or two done, so that when we get to these longer, more fuzzy ones, we know a little bit better how to go about it. That's the thought process. So I don't want to say it's avoidance, but I think we wanted to try something first where we felt a little more comfortable that we would be able to come up with a solution. Thank you. Okay, let me see. I think I've got Jennifer next and then Angie.
Thank you. Jennifer Goodnow, Morris Campus and Vice Chair of the SCC. I'm wondering if you could say a little bit about how enterprise risk management intersects with auditing and compliance, and because we've been doing those for a long time and this is kind of new, and so where's the overlap and where is this maybe really different from that?
Absolutely, it's a great question. And so Quinn as the chief auditor and Boyd as chief compliance officer, we are all working together to figure out maybe those roles and responsibilities. Overlap, there is definitely overlap, but I don't think there's, we should all be feeding into each other in a productive way. And so that's what we're trying to be really thoughtful about. So Quinn's job in terms of audit would be the assurance that the things that we say are getting done in terms of risk mitigation are getting done, right? And so he's typically looking backwards, where a lot of the work we're doing is looking forwards. And when you look at compliance, that group is really looking at, are we doing what's in our policy and in our written rule? And so again, the assurance that we're doing what we say we're going to do. So if we find areas that we go, wow, this is a really high risk area, we should pay attention to this, then we need to communicate that with the folks in audit and compliance to make sure we're all kind of working together. So that's the hope and the plan, Jennifer. Okay, I think Angie.
Yes, hi, I'm filling in for a colleague, Liz Stahl. She and I work in the Extension College. Liz is down in Southwest Minnesota. My question was, you showed that slide that had the different color coded risks. And you mentioned that the highest tier of risks, most immediate risks, should be addressed within 10 months. You mentioned also that you chose 3 of those top risks to address in the first year. Does that mean that, it's going to take 3 years potentially to resolve that list of top priority risks?
It's a great question because we're trying to figure out that cadence. So we're kicking off 2 of these risk mitigation plans right now, and that would be the crisis management and cybersecurity. And I think once we go through those first 2, we'll understand what's a reasonable timeline. So some of our timelines we hope might be maybe a little optimistic, and so we're hoping it doesn't take us 3 years to get through all of these. We also have to recognize that in some areas like cybersecurity, they already have a ton of mitigation work that's already out there. So it's more of just validating that the risk and the mitigation plans are covering the gaps. And so hopefully it's not creating new. And I think we'll just get better in time. I will admit the office of ERM is a very small office. It's part of my job. And then we have a 1 FTE. So we hope to make good progress and get better as we go. But in all honesty, Angie, I'm not sure if it will take us 1.5 years or 2 years to get through that first list. Let's see, we've got another question from Jerry.
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out from your priorities exactly how you set them, because research is nice and green, but I deal nationally with Alice Young at Texas A&M, and one of our concerns are laboratory deaths. And cybersecurity, I don't know how many people have died from it, but laboratories are dangerous intrinsically. You can't do research without doing things no one's ever done before. And I think it's just in terms of how you judge that. I think research is maybe nice and green in terms of whether you get your grant or not. I used to be in the grants business, but it's not when you talk about laboratory safety and death and maiming of our students and our postdocs and our faculty, I guess, although faculty usually don't get blown up in the lab. Just thought I would throw that out, because I think lab safety is a big risk issue and something that needs to be fairly high priority on campus.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. It's something near and dear to our heart. We have the lab safety program in our department, and I was surprised that research was so far down the list. And we tried to figure out why that was, because as we respond to lab incidents, we realize sometimes the level of danger in there. And I wonder if some people just aren't aware, or it could be that it's very well mitigated and planned for, and there's a lot of procedures around it, so people feel a sense of safety. But that it was surprising to me as well, that was the perception, that research was so far down the list. Yeah. Alan? Oh, I think you're muted, Ellen.
Oh, no, I think it's okay now. Thank you. So Ellen Messer-Davidow, Department of English, Twin Cities campus. Catherine, I wonder if you and your folks are discussing risk reporting. And I'm thinking less of these long-term things, like developing plans for cyber breaches, than something that happens and a faculty member, staff member, or student needs to report it. We are overwhelmed by the number of different offices and units to which we report: student conduct, mental health, helpline, other, it just goes on and on and on. And nobody keeps that straight. And especially if we're right in the middle of some catastrophe. You can imagine a student, a couple of students and a professor, and something happens around them. Would a single emergency risk line be a good idea? Or if not, would that delay the response because the people who are staffing the line would have to figure out who to alert? I just don't know how that would be handled, but we need to think about that.
Yeah, it's good feedback, Alan. I know it's something that Boyd, Chief Compliance Officer runs the U-Report program, which would be sort of the general hotline for non-emergency other concerns. But you're right, there's a lot of feedback through there that people sometimes don't know where to report issues, and they report to many offices, and our office tends to get things that probably should have gone to public safety. And so there is definitely work to be done. And I hope as part of these risk mitigation work, that's one of the recommendations, that we need to make it more clear for folks, how to report concerns or issues, and that we're really clear about the follow-up. So it's good feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Associate Vice President Bonnison, we will move on with the agenda. Item 12 concerns old business. There is no old business for the University Senate. Item 13 concerns new business for the University Senate. Please note that any new business will be referred to the committee unless special permission is granted by 2/3 of those voting present. Is there any new business? I don't hear, I see a hand. I see that Dr. Terrell has raised her hand for new business. Is there anyone seconding it? I see a second. So the new business is moved and seconded. Please note there is no debate on this motion, so we will proceed to a vote. Only senators and designated alternates should vote on whether to consider this today. If 2/3 of the group votes to discuss it today, we will do so. Amber, will you initiate the poll? I do apologize. I would like to hear what the title of the resolution or the new business is.
Hi, this is Carrie Terrell. The title of the resolution is Resolution on the Middle East War. I'm unable to open my video.
Okay. Amber or the university staff, is it possible to? Dr. Terrell, can you repeat the title of your resolution, please?
There we go. The resolution on the Middle East War.
For the Middle East War, okay. It is, please note that it is moved and seconded that we immediately consider the resolution on Middle East War. Again, as I noted, there is no debate on this motion, so we will proceed to a vote. Only senators and designated alternates should vote on whether to consider this today. If 2/3 of the group votes to discuss it today, we will do so. I think next we will initiate a poll.
Few more seconds if you wish to vote. All right, there being 96 ayes and 33 noes, 74% of the body has voted to consider the motion, and that does carry.
Thank you, Amber. The floor is now open for debate for 10 minutes. The debate can be extended by subsequent motions and votes of the body. In order to ensure an orderly debate, please use the check mark reaction to speak in favor of the resolution or the X reaction to speak against it. If you have a question or a neutral comment, please use the raise hand function. I'll defer to Amber to keep track of pros and cons in when she's calling on people. I invite the resolution holders to present.
Thank you.
I have one other question. I think the co-sponsor is not a senator, so in order for Miguel to participate in the presentation, we might need a senator to yield time.
A senator to do what time?
To yield their time.
I see. Is there a senator who would yield their time to my co-presenter?
Thank you. Several people have, so the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for allowing us to present our resolution. We respectfully bring this before this honorable body as a request for actions to address these concerns and hopefully help improve the health of victims in this conflict. Whereas on October 7th, Hamas attacks killed 1,400 Israeli and imprisoned 200 hostages. Whereas of October 31, Israeli bombs have killed more than an estimated 8,000 Palestinian people, 40% of whom were children, and many Israeli civilians and soldiers have also died. Whereas most recently, Israel has forced 1.1 million Palestinians from Gaza to leave, with estimates of more than 500,000 people displaced, which has caused a major humanitarian crisis and further health hazards due to the lack of hospitals, emergency services, physicians, and medical supplies. This resolution is brought by a group of medical school faculty. So whereas as physicians, we are concerned that increased military aid to the state of Israel has enabled military escalation and has resulted in increased civilian deaths and diseases, including mental illness in adults and children. Whereas we agree the concerns cited in the quote, University of Minnesota faculty's statement in solidarity with the people of Palestine, signed by over 100 faculty and others, that the interim University of Minnesota president's statement on October 11th was a one-sided condemning Hamas without holding the Israeli state responsible for its violent crimes against Palestinians. A reference is added for your use. Whereas we, like our colleagues, also fear that this statement will increase Islamophobia, anti-Palestinian, anti-Arab, and anti-Jewish violence against students, faculty, and staff of our institution who are already under considerable stress due to the conflict. Whereas we physicians stand in solidarity with both the Palestinians and the Israelis on their right to exist freely with access to basic human needs, including medical and mental health care. Therefore, be it resolved that the University Senate and the President of the University of Minnesota issue a public statement that forcefully supports an immediate ceasefire, cessation of all other hostilities, release of all hostages, and that offers the Palestinian and Israeli people, if need be, medical supplies, medicines, university technological development such as telehealth, consultation with specialists and trauma teams. We ask that the university establish a humanitarian corridor with immigration and parole program to treat, especially children, with war injuries and mental health consequences of the trauma of this war and longstanding conflict. I'd like to invite my co-presenter, Dr. Miguel Fiol, for any additional comments.
I'm muted now. Good afternoon. Can I have video as well? Thank you very much. All right, I don't see video representation of myself.
We see you, Miguel.
I guess there won't be any video. I want to thank Dr. Terrell and also the University Senate for allowing us to present a very difficult issue to this committee and to the Senate. As Dr. Terrell has said, we in the medical school, a number of physicians have been appalled at the trauma that has occurred in the Gaza region and also before in October 17. We're not partial to one group. We're a group of physicians trying to help in a very difficult situation. What we're proposing by this resolution is that the university takes a more proactive, decisive role in dealing with the situation. So far, there has been a statement from the president regarding this issue, and it was frankly dismissive of the Palestinian position, which needs to be considered in this very complex issue. What we're asking is that the university provides an ambiance to create a humanitarian corridor with the immigration officials and bring some of these children and adults who are lacking proper medical care, especially from the Gaza region, although we're not close to the Israeli side. We are requesting that the university issues a statement that clearly points to the position
that we've outlined: an immediate ceasefire, medical supplies allowed to be put together and carried over whenever possible to the Gaza region, and also that we develop what's called a humanitarian parole, where you identify individuals who can get treatment in our facilities and you provide a safety zone for these people to be brought over and treated for especially war injuries in children. As Dr. Terrell said, 40% of the victims have been, of the now to today, 9,000 Palestinians have died. 40% of those are children, and we want to be part of an effort by a university. I think a university needs to rise to the occasion and create a committee or a group of people that can look forward to providing supplies, telemedicine consultation, which we already have a number of requests from Gaza doctors in a number of areas, including trauma, pediatrics, OBGYN, neurosurgery, to offer advice in the management of these victims of war. We ask the Senate to please vote and move forward this resolution so our university becomes more proactive and deals with this crisis, which is in our doors and which we're faced every day in our television, to which we're appalled is happening. So I ask from your heart the support that we create these avenues that are outlined to bring forth help to a very, very suffering population on both sides of the line there between Gaza and Israel. Thank you very much for consideration of an immediate support of this resolution. Thank you, Dr. Terrell, for presenting it, as I'm not an academic senator at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Terrell and Dr. Fiol. The floor is now open for debate for 10 minutes. I'll repeat the instructions. The debate can be extended by subsequent motions and votes of the body. In order to ensure an orderly debate, please use the checkmark reaction to speak in favor of the resolution, or the X reaction to speak against it. If you have a question or a neutral comment, please use the raise hand function. I'll defer to Amber to keep track of and call people in line.
Okay, first I see Mary Owen. Sorry, Mary, it looks like you're, there you go.
Okay. I'm not a senator, so I need the support of another senator to speak. Can I get that?
It looks like you have plenty of support.
Miigwech. My name is Mary Owen. I'm a physician and in the Department of Family Medicine on the Duluth campus of the medical school. I'm asking my colleagues here today to approve this, this resolution. I teach Native American health to medical students on a regular basis, and in doing so, I teach about Native American health. One of the things I tell students regularly is that they are not responsible for the past, for those horrific things that happened. The treatment of the U.S. government, the basically genocidal treatment of the U.S. government toward Native Americans. However, here we are again today. This is a moment when we can act on something horrific that is happening. Again, we are seeing people dehumanized. And as a result of that dehumanization, or that dehumanization is giving others the opportunity or the reason or the justification to a mass killing, to enact a mass killing that, as Dr. Fiol and Dr. Terrell pointed out, includes at least 40% children, or thousands and thousands of children, as well as women. I recognize that there is killing on both sides. This is a horrific event, but I think it is imperative that we not turn a blind eye to something right in front of us. We look back in history and think, wow, if I had been there, what had I done? What would I have done? We have that opportunity today in a incredibly tragic and painful way. So please vote for this resolution. Allow us to make a statement in support of all the lives in the Middle East, and to get these services and medical care where it's needed. Miigwech. Thank you all to giving your time.
Okay, I see Carl next with a question or a neutral comment. So I'm going to let you go ahead, Carl, in case it's a question.
My apologies. That was me ceding time. I forgot to turn off
Oh,
my
no worries.
response. Okay.
All right, then next we have Alicia Cohen.
Thank you. I'm speaking against the resolution for two reasons. First, I appreciate the medical folks bringing this horrible situation and the concerns, the suffering in the Middle East is clear. But I oppose the resolution for two reasons. First, it was not presented early, so I haven't had time to review it and others haven't. And I think language is very, very important to be precise here. And I specifically object to taking issue with President Ettinger's statement. I think that he called the Hamas terrorism what it was the brutal rape of women, children, other horrific things. I think he was right to call it what it was. And I think that our community has to be willing to call that kind of violence what it is, given Hamas's mission, which is to not just eradicate the state of Israel, but also Jewish people. I think that this resolution both calls for releasing the hostages and a ceasefire, but I'm not sure of its language and I'm traveling and haven't looked at it. So I appreciate both of those points, but I object to the linkage of the faculty opinion statement. I object to linkage to the disinvestment in Israel and other items. And honestly, I would like to be more composed in my opposition today because this is very personal to me, to my people, but I can't today. So I just ask that you consider delaying and deferring this and giving us some more time on this, as well as voting no against this today. I think we can take moral action, but I just really object to not being able to review this before this meeting and to be able to think about this more clearly.
All right, I don't see anyone else in the queue to speak in favor. So next is Ellen Messer-Davidow.
Okay. Oh, I am. Thank you. I'm unmuted. Like Alicia, I haven't had time to read the text carefully, and the scrolling down the screen was out of sync with the reading. So I was having trouble following it. Secondly, I agree that I think we need time to consider it. Maybe I should have just raised my hand because I want to make a suggestion. Is it possible to circulate the resolution text to faculty senate members and then have an emergency meeting or a special meeting next Thursday in which we can debate the resolution from an informed point of view and then vote on it? I'm not sure how procedure works, so I'm posing that as a question.
My apologies, Dr. Corfield. I see now that you had the green checkup. I thought they would pop to the beginning, but they don't. So that's my mistake. Please go ahead, Aaron Corfield.
Hi there, Aaron Corfield. I'm a faculty senator from the medical school. I am speaking in favor of this resolution. I know Dr. Terrell and and I know Dr. Fuel very well. This resolution was crafted with care and understanding for both sides, and with the understanding that this is for humanitarian aid and the things that we can do as a physician body as part of this medical school to help those who are gravely injured in this war on both sides. And we have a very limited time here that our actions have that our actions have the most amount of effect for the people in this war. So I would ask my colleagues to vote in favor of this resolution today.
Okay, next I see Natalia Perkins.
Thanks a lot. I don't need to add any words. I think this is very important resolution, but without reading this in detail, I cannot support it. And again, I think that the call from the president a few weeks ago, what was important there, that he finally called what has happened as a terrorist attack, and I think that was very important. And maybe there's a lot of need in this resolution, but that should be carefully check for the language. Thank you.
I apologize to intervene. We will run out of time in terms of we have 2 more minutes left. I just want all of us to be aware of that. Amber, please call the next person.
All right, I have to say that the check marks and the X's are not populating well for me, so I'm having a little bit of trouble. So I'm doing my best to try to get people in the right order. I think it might be best going ahead if everyone just raises their hand, and please chat me if you're pro or con, and I'll keep track that way. Next, I'm going to call on Matthew Verkuylen.
Thank you. I have a question regarding a procedural point of order question with this. In resolutions that I've seen in the past, and I'm going to plead ignorance a little bit, but we've had a process where the resolutions go through the various consultative committees before they come to the University Senate. And I understand the importance of this, and I understand the timing of this, but I'm also concerned that this sets a precedent if we're not following the same procedure as we would with other resolutions.
Okay, next I believe we have Kosia. Just got you unmuted, I think. Oh.
Mute. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll yield my time. Sorry.
Okay.
I pressed it by mistake.
So actually, I might intervene again. We have run out of time, the 10 minutes allocated time. If we want to extend debate on this topic, we will need to go through someone suggesting a time extension. There will be a motion. Someone will need to second it, and then we can extend time again. Is there a motion to extend time for this debate?
How about a thumbs up for that?
Okay, is there, Natalia, thank you. Is there someone to second the extension to debate? Thank you, Jerry. Now that we have it, I think, let me just be very clear that we need to now that we have a time extension, the parliamentarian, do we need to vote on the motion to extend debate? And does it have to be by 2/3 majority?
Yes, technically, we do need to vote on a motion to extend debate, and it needs a 2/3 majority to continue the conversation.
Thank you, Nancy. Amber, would you please start the poll?
Few more seconds if you need to vote. We are at 66% approval, which is right in the middle. We're gonna need a couple minutes to calculate this.
I have a question, Madam Chairman. I think I'm not a senator, but I do have a question, which I think is important.
While we are waiting for the results, if this is a clarifying question, please
Yes,
go
it is. It is, Madam Chair. It would influence the vote.
Okay. There are a couple of issues. You will need to be recognized as a senator to make a statement, or someone will have to give EL time. My sincere apologies that we are waiting for the results. It seems like we are exactly at 66%. So we are checking the process in terms of what happens next.
So I have a very simple comment.
Jerry.
So this resolution says, whereas as physicians, and as much as I like my colleagues in the medical school, I'm not one of them. I'm a plant biologist, I'm a member of the Lost Kingdom, and I'm not a physician. So it makes it difficult for me to support a resolution by and for physicians, because many of us have ethical values that exceed that of most of our physicians on campus. So I just wanted to add that to the discussion, because this resolution is only for physicians.
Thank you, Jerry.
Madam Chair, I insist on being recognized for a procedural question.
Go ahead.
My question is, are only senators voting on the issue of extending the debate? Because I'm not a senator and I did not vote. Is the extension issue for guests as well, or only for senators?
It is only for senators, and the vote is for whether we should extend the time for debate.
Yeah, that's what I did not know. Thank you, Madam Chair.
No, thank you very much. It's that we are running out of time on the Senate meeting as well at this time. The vote for extension of debate is exactly at 65.7%. So since it is very close, it would be very wise for us to move to, as the chair, make this decision in terms of whether we want to vote on, we will not have an extension on the debate, but we would like to move ahead and see if there is a motion to approve the resolution as it appears on the screen. And that way, if it does not pass, we still have a way to get to other committees. I hope that would be in line with the parliamentarian rules, and I'm not violating any rules. This is my first time chairing this committee. Ms. Parliamentarian, would that be acceptable?
Yes, sorry, we were going back and forth on muting and unmuting. I want to briefly first address the point of information or order that was raised earlier about process for considering resolutions. Typically, a resolution or some sort of statement of the University Senate is introduced in committees along the way, but the way that this particular resolution statement was introduced today is appropriate under our procedures and bylaws for new business. It was presented as new business. There was a vote as to whether we should have an immediate consideration, and we voted to immediately consider it. And that is how, so their due process has been followed for this proposal. If we had not voted for immediate consideration, it would have been referred to the Senate Consultative Committee and required to be presented at our next meeting. So I just wanted to confirm the point of order. As to voting right now, I am feeling a little bit confused about whether there are multiple motions out at one time. I believe that Senator Terrell has introduced a motion requesting that the Senate approve this statement. Would you say that's correct, Senator Terrell?
Solution.
That was the ask that I brought from my colleagues in the medical school. Correct.
Thank you. So we could vote on whether the Senate today wishes to support this resolution. It could also be brought, I think if we vote today, I'm new at parliamentarian as well, so this is fun. I think if we vote today not to support this, it could still be raised in committees and reviewed and perhaps brought with different wording at a subsequent meeting, I believe. I'm not 100% certain on that. And perhaps other people who are more deeply versed in parliamentary procedure have thoughts here. They can chat me directly.
It seems reasonable to move forward to see if there is a motion to approve the resolution as it appears or as it was read to us. Dr. Terrell, as sponsoring the resolution, is that okay with you if we move forward?
Yes, I would support moving in that direction. Thank you.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the resolution as it appears? I need someone to say yes or no.
I believe Senator Terrell did just make that motion.
Okay, do we have someone who can second it? I don't see any hands. Is Ellen, your hand? Okay. Whitney, thank you. So we have a motion made and someone has seconded it. So we are now voting on whether to approve the resolution as it appears. Please remember that only senators and designated alternatives should vote. This motion needs a simple majority to carry.
Few more seconds if you'd like to vote. There being 49 ayes and 80 nays, the motion does not carry.
Thank you, Amber, for relating the results. So as you heard, the motion did not carry. If the sponsors want, they could go to the committees for the next discussion. I don't know the next future states, so I will leave it to that, and perhaps a parliamentarian can work with Dr. Terrell and Dr. Fiol in figuring out the next steps. But thank you all. With this, we have come to the regular agenda. Am I missing anything? Just because I just want to make sure. Am I missing anything? No. Okay. Is there a motion for adjournment? Okay, I see a few hands. Is there someone to second it? I see seconding. Thank you. Amber, would you please initiate the poll? This is for a motion to adjourn, the vote to adjourn.
Sorry, I'm having trouble finding the poll. I had a lot of them set up for today.
While Amber is finding the poll, I do apologize to people who did have their hands up, but since the motion to the meeting has ended, I would not be able to call on you this time, but perhaps the next meeting we can get to you. Thank you very much.
I am for some reason not able to launch the poll. Could we do a raise hands vote for adjournment, please?
I see a lot.
80, well, 80, 90 going up hands and one celebratory thing and some thumbs. So I think we're good. I think it carries.
Thank you all very much for this meeting. This is a reminder that the faculty senate meeting will be starting in 5 minutes. So it's 4:22. At 4:27, we'll start the faculty senate meeting. Thank you. Welcome to the Faculty Senate. My name is Professor Rachna Shah, the Vice Chair of this body. I now call the Faculty Senate to order. Item 2 concerns administrative responses to Faculty Senate actions and is represented for information. There are none pending. Item 3 is approval of minutes from Faculty Senate meeting on September 28, 2023. Amber, please initiate the poll.
I am still not able to do a poll. May I propose that we do a show of hands again? All right, there being 56 ayes. That motion carries.
Thank you. Item 4 is FCC report. Professor B, please go ahead.
Thank you, Vice Chair Shah. Hello again, everybody. I just have a couple of quick FCC related items to report to the Faculty Senate today. The first item pertains to a policy consultation we did at our October 19th meeting. The FCC met with representatives from the Office of Human Resources as part of their consultation with various governance groups on a new administrative policy that will go into effect January 1, 2024. The policy implements the new Minnesota Earned Sick and Safe Time law, and it describes new provisions and practices around employees taking paid time off. My understanding is that there will be some communication coming out from the Office of Human Resources describing the new policy before the end of the year. And at our meeting, the FCC emphasized the need to really provide some clear communication to faculty and their supervisors, since many in this employee group, particularly those, for example, on a 9-month appointment, don't really deal with leaves of this kind very frequently. At our October 19th meeting, the FCC also discussed various qualities and characteristics we think the Presidential Search Advisory Committee should be looking for in our next president. The committee shared these ideas in the form of a letter to the Search Advisory Committee, and that letter is included for information in today's Faculty Senate docket materials. I would also point out that the FCC's September 12th letter to the Board of Regents sharing the committee's views on the presidential search process itself, as well as the makeup of the Search Advisory Committee, is also included for information in today's docket. I mentioned this letter in my report at the September 28th Faculty Senate meeting. At the FCC meeting that took place earlier today, the committee approved forwarding several proposed revisions to the Faculty Senate Constitution, bylaws, and rules to the Faculty Senate for consideration at our next meeting on November 30th. So this is just a continuation of revisions that were being made starting last year. And these changes have already been made for the University Senate Constitution, as well as those for other constituent senates. And as some of you may recall, we also made some changes to the rules of the Faculty Senate last year, which is why we no longer vote on the 2-minute rule for speaking. But we didn't quite get the job done, so we're just trying to finish that up, and we'll try to do that at our next Senate meeting. Finally, I want to give you just a brief update on the status of a forthcoming report by the FCC on the competitiveness of faculty compensation at the U. As I mentioned in my last report, the FCC has been working on this report for the last 6 or 7 months, and it's examining the competitiveness of faculty compensation relative to peer institutions. The report is relatively data rich, lots of graphs. And so prior to finalizing the report, we've shared it with the board office, the president's office, the provost's office, the Office of Human Resources, and the Office of the Vice President for Research. And this was done in part to give the administration an opportunity to raise any issues, questions, or concerns they might have had about the accuracy or quality of the data that are included in the report. And that consultation has now been wrapped up, and the final draft of the report is with the FCC membership for a final read-through. And the committee will vote on approving and releasing the report at our next FCC meeting on November 16th. And if formally approved by the FCC, we will be sharing the report with all faculty senators, and I think all faculty. And I've reserved time on the agenda for the November 30th faculty senate meeting to present some of the findings from the report to this body. So please be sure to attend our next faculty senate meeting. And with that, I will conclude the FCC chair's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor B, for that report. Item 6 concerns a letter from the FCC to the Board of Regents regarding the Presidential Search Advisory Committee and is presented for information. Item C concerns a letter from the FCC to the Presidential Search Advisory Committee and is also presented for information.
Rachna, I think you might have skipped an item.
Oh, item 5 is questions for FCC chair. Is that the one? Thank you.
Yep.
Item 5 is questions for FCC chair. The floor is open for questions. My apologies.
Not seeing any questions, I will hand it back over to you, Vice Chair Shah.
Thank you. Item 6 concerns a letter from the FCC to the Board of Regents regarding the Presidential Search Advisory Committee and is presented for information. Item 7 concerns a letter from the FCC to the Presidential Search Advisory Committee and is also presented for information. Item 8 concerns old business. There is no old business for the Faculty Senate. Item 9 concerns new business for the Faculty Senate. Please note that any new business will be referred to the committee unless special permission is granted by 2/3 of those voting and present. Is there any new business? I do not see any raised hands. Please speak up if you have any new business. Seeing none, I would propose a motion for adjournment. Would I see a motion for adjournment? I see a lot of hands for second. Thank you very much. Amber, would you please initiate the poll or?
I got it this time.
Thank you.
Couple more seconds if you wish to vote. There being 80 ayes and 0 nays, that motion carries.
Thank you, Amber. With this, we are adjourned.